Welcome in to the Roll Tide Rewind. We appreciate you guys joining us tonight. If you like what you see on this channel, please give us a subscription. We are at 968 subscribers when I last checked, so close to 1,000. So do what you keep doing and help us out. But we have Cole back today. We're going to talk about the SEC standings for Alabama basketball, an update and an outlook for the rest of the year. Is Alabama going to get a double bye? First, Cole, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Thomas. Would have been worse if that game last night against Arkansas had gone differently. But very happy we pulled out the win in what was a super fun game, but very gave me a little bit of a heartache. I won't lie, but we got through it.
Hey, that's college basketball for you.
That's right.
But before we start in the SEC standings, let's talk about that, Cole. Let's recap the Alabama-Arkansas game. I think that's a good start to the video. Darius Acuff tipped the cap to the man, 49 points, 16 of 27 from the floor. But it's Alabama that ends up pulling through. LeBaron Philon had 35 points. He had 7 assists, only 2 turnovers. But a big game out of Amari Allen, 19 points, 11 rebounds. Also, Aiden Sherrill of 26 points and 13 rebounds. Aiden Holloway didn't miss a shot. We didn't get much from the bench. This was very much the starters carrying the load, especially Allen, Sherrill, Philon, and Holloway. But what was your takeaway on this game, Cole?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start like you did by giving flowers to Acuff. It's just an unreal game. I was trying to think back at if there was a single game I remember where Alabama just went up against a player that played that well, and I can't think of one. I mean, that was one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen. It felt like every shot he put up was going in. But moving on to the Alabama side of it, I think it was a super entertaining game, big win, as we're going to talk about here with potential SEC standings shakeup that could have. But it didn't really change my opinion one way or the other on this team. It kind of was – I won't say what I expected because I didn't expect that much craziness, but it's kind of a similar story to what we've seen. We scored it really well, had really solid performances from guys like Allen, who I thought was the unsung hero of the game. I thought he, especially in the second half, was probably our best player. And then obviously the huge game from Philon. But the defense is just a problem. It's just going to be a problem. There's not much we can do. We hoped Bediako would help. Obviously, he's not going to play the rest of the year. So we're going to have to find ways to win without having a very good defense, which is tough. But the Final Four team was maybe the worst defense under Nate Oates. So it's possible, but it's going to be tougher.
Yeah, and like the performance thing, the only thing I can compare it to is probably Ja Morant when he played at Murray State. I remember when he played in that game, there was just absolutely nothing Alabama can do. Now, he's Ja Morant. It's probably the big reason why. But, this game at the beginning, I remember we talked about this during the game, but this game, how the game started with Arkansas just not missing any shots. It reminded me of the Kentucky game from the Final Four year when we were shooting like over 40%, which is good, like near 50%, but it doesn't matter when Kentucky's shooting almost 60, 70% from the field, not missing any shot. That's what it felt like in the first half, but Alabama really flipped it in the second half, shooting over 80% in the second half. That's an outrageous number. So credit to the team for rebounding back in the second half, but also in overtime, Arkansas scored first in both overtimes, and Alabama rebounded each time. Arkansas had chances to win the game at the end of overtime, missing a putback, and then they missed another putback that Alabama took advantage of and ran out the clock. So great win for Alabama. It's probably one of the more entertaining regular season basketball games under Nate Oates. The only one I think I can compare it to, maybe the Iron Bowl last year or the Iron Bowl during Brandon Miller's year that was at Coleman Coliseum. Those are some of the ones that poke back in my mind. But scoring-wise, this is insane. Like 232 combined points is absolutely insane.
Yeah, insane game. One of the craziest I've seen all year for sure, and a huge win as we transition here into the SEC standings. Getting that win is going to be big in terms of potential tiebreaker scenarios against a team in Arkansas that we very well could finish the season with the same record as. So massive game there.
Yeah, so let's throw into the SEC standings real quick. These are the teams right now that would receive the double byes that would sit there on Friday. Florida's number 1 seed. Florida has found their gear in SEC play. They had a hard non-conference schedule, and they found their gear in SEC play, and they look like the best team in the SEC again. I don't think they're as strong as they are last year because they don't have the elite guard play they had last year with Walter Clayton, Will Richard, and Elijah Martin, but they have serviceable guys in Boogie Flann and Xavier Lee. But when they have the best front court in the country with Thomas Hall, you have Ruben Chinyelu, who probably is the most improved player in the country. And then you also have Alice Condon and Hand Lofton on the bench. You have a really serviceable front court. But 2 to 4, all of them are at 9-4. Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee. So Alabama beat Arkansas, Arkansas beat Tennessee, and Tennessee beat Alabama. So where this comes into play in a 3-way tie, according to the SEC laws, the best winning percentage of games played among the tied teams. So as of right now, they are the same because Alabama beat Arkansas, Arkansas beat Tennessee, Tennessee beat Alabama. So then after that, you go best winning percentage of the tied teams versus the number 1 seed. Alabama lost to Florida, Tennessee lost to Florida. Arkansas hasn't played Florida yet. So that could be the big question coming in. However, one thing that we haven't accounted for yet is Alabama still plays Tennessee again. So, and Alabama doesn't play Arkansas again. Tennessee doesn't play Arkansas again. So if Alabama is to beat Tennessee or Tennessee is to beat Alabama, if a 3-way tie were to happen, that game is going to probably decide who gets that second, just because they happen to play each other twice. What do you think of this top 4, Cole? Do you think they probably separate themselves from everybody else, or you think it's still a little cluster from 2 to 9?
Yeah, I think number 1 is Florida. I think they've proven it all year. I mean, obviously the game against us, we looked outmatched, and I don't know if they played again necessarily, but they were clearly by far and away the better team in that game, and as they have been in most of the games they've played in SEC play so far this year. So then it's kind of, it's fighting for that number 2 seed, honestly. And I think Alabama has as good of a chance as anybody. I think we're going to go into the schedules more, but yeah, that game against Tennessee is the big one for sure, because the winner of that game likely has the tiebreak scenario if it's a 3-way tie, because they'll have 2 wins against the other 2 teams, whereas the other teams will have a max of 1. So huge game against Tennessee. We'll see. Obviously, there's no guarantee that those 3 teams end up tied, but yeah, that could potentially be a big swing in who gets that 2 seed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll go into the teams that are sitting at 8-5 in conference. So these are the teams that would be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are not in order. This is just, I just kind of threw them together. But they all have the same conference record. But Alabama has already played all 5 of these teams. They beat Missouri at home by a lot of points. They lost to Texas at home, lost to Vanderbilt on the road in like the second SEC game. At the time, that was the 2 presumed favorites of the SEC, were Alabama and Vanderbilt at the time. They beat A&M, and they've also beat Kentucky in the first SEC game. Out of these 5 teams, Cole, which one kind of scares you the most, and which one is like the least intimidating?
Okay, so I'll give you 2 answers here. I will give you the team I would be most scared to play, and the team that I think has the best chance of potentially passing in Alabama to get into one of those top 4 spots. So first, the team I'm most scared to play is Kentucky. I think, first of all, Mark Pope is a fantastic coach. I think they struggled mightily at the beginning of the year, and I think a lot of people remember back to that, and they're like, oh, Kentucky, they may not be as good as they were expected to be. But since they've lost the 2 players that were presumed to be their best players, they've really turned it on. They lost Lowe, they lost Quaintance, 2 guys that were supposed to be huge impact guys for them. And since then, just kind of like they did last year, they lost players at the beginning of the season, but then the guys that were left learned how to play together really well, and they've been really, really playing well. They lost a tough one to Georgia, which I think is probably going to keep them out of being one of those top 4 seeds. But in terms of the team I'm most scared of, it's probably them. The team that I think is the most likely to jump us for a top 4 spot is Vandy. Vanderbilt's kind of struggled over the last few weeks, not playing nearly as well as they were at the beginning of the season when they were looked at as maybe, like you mentioned, one of the best teams in the SEC, if not the best team in the SEC. But if they can get back to how they were at the beginning of the season, this schedule is not too bad. Kind of tricky games against Kentucky, and then they still have 2 games against Tennessee. But I think that's why they're a little scary, because we need to pass Tennessee, right? Especially since we lost to them. But Vandy plays them twice. So if they beat Tennessee twice, that's 2 big wins for Vandy. That could potentially jump them in front of us, especially since they would own the tiebreaker against us. So that's the team I'm most scared of.
Yeah, we'll move into schedule like you were talking about. So these are the 3 teams that are kind of in that cluster at the beginning: Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee. We'll focus on Alabama's schedule more so than the other 2. But let's start with Alabama. You play – so at LSU this Saturday, this is going to be after the committee releases their top 16 teams, or top 16 seeds, as they say. Alabama is likely to be a 4 seed. They're likely to be a team that's in the 13 to 16 range. And then you follow up with a game at LSU and Mississippi State. LSU and Mississippi State are two of the lesser teams in the conference. LSU would still be, I believe, a quad. I believe it would still be a quad one, a quad one win. Yeah, it'd be a quad one win, which is great for the resume. But Alabama should be a good favorite over LSU, should be a good favorite over Mississippi State, unless Josh Hubbard does what Darius Acuff did and go for 49, like he almost did against Auburn. So, but then Alabama's last 3 games, that's going to be that tough stretch. At Tennessee is always a hard place to play. We haven't beat Tennessee, I think, like in 4 or something years. At Georgia is always just a weird place to play. Nate Oates has struggled at Georgia. In 2021, they lost to Georgia in conference play, and that was Georgia's only win in conference play, was beating Alabama. And then the last time they played there, I think, was the Final Four year, and Alabama had to make like a 10, 15-point comeback to win the game. And then you have an Auburn team to end the season with. With a team like Georgia and Auburn, they're going to be hungry to win a basketball game because those teams are teetering on the bubble line. Auburn more so than Georgia, I think, maybe vice versa. But Auburn's on a losing streak. Georgia did just get a win against Kentucky. But what do you think about these last 5 games for Alabama, Cole, and like what Alabama needs to do to keep a top 4 seed?
Yeah, definitely. So I think you kind of hit on it, but the first 2 are must wins. You have to beat LSU on the road. You have to beat Mississippi State at home. Obviously, Josh Hubbard is scary for Mississippi State. Anytime you play on the road in the SEC can be tough. So not to say that those are guaranteed wins, but those are must wins if you want to stay on the 4 line and if you want to get one of the double buys in the SEC tournament. Then you get into the tough ones, and I've already mentioned it. The Tennessee game is the big one because if you lose to Tennessee, that almost assures you that Tennessee needs to lose 2 of their other 4 games for us to potentially pass them and get the 2 seed. I don't personally see that happening. I think Tennessee, I may have underrated them at the beginning of the season. They've been playing a lot better. They look very good against us. I don't see them losing 2 games other than against us. So if you get that win against Tennessee, that's huge. And I think that's a really good point about Georgia and Auburn both being very much on the bubble. Those could be very, very tough games because those teams could be fighting for their tournament lives in those last 2 games. So another 2 that are very important to get the win there. We'll see. It's a tough schedule, but it's very manageable. I don't think it's significantly tougher or easier than the schedules that we see there from Arkansas or Tennessee as well. I think all the schedules are pretty similar, so it's going to come down to who plays the best down the stretch.
Yeah, for sure. We look at Arkansas and Tennessee. Arkansas's got to play Missouri twice. I feel like Missouri is also another bubble team that is very dangerous. They just beat Vanderbilt last time out. A&M is also fighting for their bubble lives too. They were had a great record to start the year and even were, I think, almost midway through, they had the lead in SEC play, but they've since kind of teetered off. But that's a team that's going to be hungry. But Arkansas, the key thing here is they have not played Florida yet, and they're about to go at Florida. Mm-hmm. And I think they have the tools to beat Florida. It's just with their depth of only 7 guys. Florida also doesn't play many guys either, but you're, asking a lot of Darius Acuff and then a front court against Thomas Hall, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu. But I think where Arkansas has the advantage is the guards. I don't think that Florida's guards match up well with Arkansas's guards, especially Malik Thomas and then also Billy Richmond as well. But I think out of the 3, honestly, I think Arkansas has I don't know if they have the more favorable schedule. I just like the matchup of them versus all those teams, even against Florida. I do think Florida will probably win, but I like the matchups for Arkansas. Tennessee will get Vanderbilt twice. And Vanderbilt, they can be a really efficient team when you play them. I think they're still second in KenPom in the SEC, or they can just have an off game like against Missouri. Tennessee still has to play Missouri as well. They also get to play South Carolina, which should be an easy win for them. But yeah, for Alabama, to get a double bye, I think you're looking at probably going 4-1 in this, and you're feeling pretty safe. We'll look at Florida's schedule actually for a second, even though I don't foresee Florida having a meltdown. If Alabama fans are wanting to win the SEC, you probably need to expect Alabama to win all these games. That includes Tennessee, so you would be finishing at 14-4 in the conference. So then you would need Florida to probably lose, 2 or 3 of these games? Yeah, they would have to lose 3 because they would have the tiebreaker over Alabama, unless we also have a tie with Arkansas or Florida also joins in the three-way tie, and then Alabama maybe sneaks out of it. But with Florida here, if you look at it, probably 2 to 3 losses, you're probably looking at, I would say, Texas, Arkansas, and Kentucky. I don't see them losing to Ole Miss. I don't see them losing to Mississippi State. It being at Texas makes it a little bit tougher. Arkansas is a good team, and then Kentucky played Florida fairly well. Florida won the game. Florida pulled away at the end, but I think Kentucky played them very well. What do you think about Florida's rest of their schedule? Because I personally see them having the conference locked up by maybe midweek of the last week, and the last game it's not really playing for the conference title. I think they already have it locked up by then, but what would you think?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think it helps that Florida to me is the best team. So while this is a tricky schedule, there's not a single game on here that I look at and I necessarily think Florida will lose. I think on the whole, just based on percentages and everything, they probably go 4-1 and drop one of them. Maybe it's that game at Kentucky. I think that's kind of a tricky one. But I think it's going to be tough for Alabama to catch them. I think you kind of hit on it, but I think the best chance Alabama has would be if Florida drops the game against Arkansas and one other one, either maybe Kentucky or Texas, Alabama wins out and Arkansas wins out. That would become a 3-way tie between those 3 teams. And then maybe Alabama's able to get off on the tiebreaker because every team would be 1-1 against the other 2 teams. So I think that's the best chance. At that point, the tiebreaker, I think, would go to the record against the highest seeded team, which it's hard to know who that would be at this point. Could be Tennessee, which might be trouble for Alabama. Could be Vanderbilt, like we mentioned, which would also be trouble for Alabama. So I think the chances of Alabama getting up to the 1 seed are pretty slim at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not to be, looked at as a disappointment because if Alabama gets the 2nd seed at 14-4 with a win over Tennessee, winning the last 5 games, which means Alabama won their last 9 games, is incredible. Yeah. So that's one thing to not take away as a bad thing. But we'll go.
I think to that point, you might be trending towards potentially a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. So that could be huge as well.
Oh yeah, if Alabama wins out these last 5 games, 3 seed, probably number 10 overall seed. I think that's what you're pushing probably. So, which is a great company, especially where Alabama was maybe a few weeks ago.
Yep.
But we'll look at this is the SEC tournament bracket here. This is the new one as of last year because now there's 16 teams instead of 14. But they start on Wednesday, then to Thursday, then we got Friday, Saturday, and then Selection Sunday. But Alabama is probably looking at a 2 to 3 seed range right here. So I zoomed in more here to be a little bit clearer. But if Alabama is going to be a 2-3 seed, you're looking at possibly playing the 7 or the 6 seed. And then that's the next question I'm going to bag. Who does Alabama not want to play that is in that like 5 through 9 range? And I think I think you may have mentioned it earlier. You said it was Kentucky is who Alabama should be wanting to avoid. Is there another team that Alabama should also be wanting to avoid?
Kentucky's a scary one to me. I think Kentucky's the best of those teams. They've probably got the best resume when you look at their team as a whole. And I also think they're playing a lot better over the last month or two. They're scary. A&M played us very, very well. I think they have a very similar style to us, which could lead to an interesting game. They could be a little bit scary, and at times they've looked very good. I think they're a bit on a downswing right now, not playing as well. So if that continues, maybe they're not as scary, but style-wise, they could be trouble. But, yeah, I think for me it's Kentucky.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one, let me go back to that list again. I have the list right here. I mean, I guess it's an easy answer to say Texas since Texas already beat Alabama, but also I feel like that could have just been a fluky game because Alabama, I think, is much better than Texas. I liked how we looked against Missouri. But yeah, I guess my answer would be A&M. I think the way the A&M style plays, and I think A&M is just going to be a little hungrier because I think what I saw last year out of Texas in the SEC tournament, I think they came into the SEC tournament as not in the tournament, and they won 2 quad 1 games because I think every SEC game last year was a quad 1 game. They won 2 of them, and they were in the last team or one of the last teams in the tournament to get a chance to play. But I feel like that's going to be more benefit for A&M because I feel like these teams are just hungry in the SEC tournament to try to get one more game, one more day, and try to get to the NCAA tournament. But the last page we have here is the
really quick before we move on from this, just one thing on the bracket that I wanted to mention. We've talked about right now it's a three-way tie between spots 2, 3, and 4. I think it's very, very important for Alabama to get either the 2 or the 3 seed. There's not a huge difference between 2 and 3, but if you get one of those spots, it means the matchup with Florida gets pushed back to the championship, which is a huge deal, I think, because first of all, you've got a better chance for Florida to get upset before then. I mentioned it earlier, but Alabama did not look physically ready to compete with Florida. Hopefully that could change if we played them again, but they're by far the team I'm the most scared of, and they're the biggest hurdle to Alabama winning a championship. So if you get on the other side of them, there's a better chance they potentially get upset before they get to you, and there's also a better chance of potentially them having some tired legs at the end after playing, I guess, 3 games in 3 days in the championship. So I think Alabama's chances of winning a potential championship are much higher at the 2 or the 3 seed versus the 4 or the 5.
And yeah, it could be a difference of a seed boost. Like, for example, if Alabama is to win out, you're sitting there probably at a 3 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, like probably around the number 11, 12, 10 overall. But then if you win 2 games and say you avoid playing Florida until the last game, maybe those 2 wins are enough to bump you even higher to benefit your seeding in the NCAA tournament. So it's a good point to bring up there. So I have the best case, likely case, worst case scenarios for these last 5 games. We'll make our prediction. Cole, how do you think these last 5 games are going to go for Alabama?
I'm going to hesitantly say 4-1. I think we're playing a little bit better. Again, I maybe I shouldn't, but I like our chances. I think we should be 2-0 through the first 2, LSU and Mississippi State. I think we probably lose at Tennessee, but then Georgia and Auburn, to me, both have kind of fallen off recently, aren't playing as well. I don't quite think they have the athletes to match up with us on either of those teams. So I'll hesitantly give us the win against both Georgia and Auburn, though it would not surprise me at all if we dropped one of those as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think at LSU, Mississippi State need to be your gimmies. I listed the best cases 5-0 because Alabama can beat Tennessee. It's not like they don't have the athletes to do so. Amari Allen and Aiden Holloway hopefully will be healthy for the game and they can play. Now, for the worst case scenario, I think the worst case scenario for I mentioned that there for the 2 and 3. For worst case scenario, how it starts is you lose at LSU, and I think if you lose a road game against a team you're not supposed to lose, kind of like how Alabama lost to Texas at home when Alabama should really have lost that game. I think LSU kind of reminds me a lot of that. And I think Alabama is much better than LSU, but Alabama was a heavy favorite to beat Texas, and they dropped it. And then even last week when Alabama played at Ole Miss, Alabama was pretty bad in the first half. They shot like 4 of maybe 23 from 3 in the first half. Now, they turned it on in the second half and won by a lot of points, but what's to say that that happens for a full game? Like how – I think it was Kentucky in 2022 and Alabama was like 2 of 30 from 3 in the game or something insane like that. So you have to show up on these road games. Even like LSU and Georgia is going to be unranked matchups, but you have to, come into play. And I think that's usually in the last few years under Nate Oates, the last week or the last like 3-ish games usually are sometimes when Alabama falters a little bit and loses some games. The Final 4 year, we lost to Tennessee in a really big game and then followed it up with a loss as well after that. And then last year, this is different circumstances, but we went at Tennessee, which is a 2 seed versus a 2 seed last year, 2 top 7 teams. We lost on a buzzer beater, then went home against Florida, who ended up being a 1 seed, lose that game. Then you end up beating Auburn on a buzzer beater, but you almost lost all 3 of those games, which wouldn't have been a bad thing. But it's a thing under Nate, the last week of the regular season sometimes ends up being a hard look for Alabama. But what do you think about how the season ends, especially these 3 games? I know we said LSU, Mississippi State. If Alabama's to go 3-0 here, what is happening for Alabama in these 3 games if you go 3-0?
I mean, I think if you go 3-0, the guards have to step up. I think Holloway, LeBaron, I already mentioned it, the defense at this point, I think it's kind of a lost cause. It just has to be a little better than it's been, and then we got to outscore people. I think is the way we have to do that. Luckily, none of these teams are crazy efficient offensively, so that is possible, but obviously going to be very tricky. I'm very worried about the Tennessee game, especially in Knoxville. That feels like a game we do not win very often. But I think if we are going to win, I think it's going to be the guards that are going to have to carry us.
And last question before we go. Obviously, I think our 4 best players in no order are Phylon, Amari Allen, Aiden Sherrill, and Aiden Holloway. For Alabama to step up in these last 5 games, who is a guy besides those 4 that needs to show up in these games and make plays? Not necessarily score, 30 points, but at least make an impact.
It's Latrell Reitzel for me. He's been a lot better over the last couple of weeks, but still the 3-point percentage is not where we expected it to be, nor where it's been in the past for Alabama. But having that additional option, this is honestly kind of going underreported. This is not one of our better shooting teams. Aiden Holloway has been very good, but outside of him, not a lot of super consistent 3-point shooters on this team. I think if we could get one more really consistent guy on outside the arc, and that would be a massive boon for this offense. And I think the guy that's most likely to do that is Latrell.
I'm going to go with my gut. London Jemison, I'm putting all my stock in you in these last 5 games. I believe in you, London.
He's big for the potential defense for sure. I think he could be a big boon for the defense.
Absolutely. Well, that'll conclude the video today. Be sure to maybe join us on Saturday. I'm going to do a video right after the committee reveals their top 16 seeds and went out wherever Alabama is. We're going to go over their placement and how they can eventually maybe move up into the standings. And then we'll do some more basketball videos before the SEC tournament, going over bracketology and doing an SEC tournament preview when the time comes. But until then, hope everyone has a great rest of your week, and roll Tide.
Roll Tide.